Dealing with a narcissistic parent is hard enough, but when cognitive decline comes into play, it makes everything so much more difficult. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about when narcissism and dementia collide and some things that you can do for you to help you get through this process. I'm Dr. Meg Haworth. I'm a transpersonal psychologist, holistic nutritional chef, and best-selling author. And I help wounded icons, adult children of narcissists, to become healed icons. And what's an icon? Somebody who's independent, confident, original, and naturally you. And I do this in my online academy called Love School Online Holistic Academy, where we do holistic medicine to help you heal from the many different wounds that can be sustained from narcissistic abuse. If you're interested in talking to me about joining the academy, all you have to do is apply to speak with me, and those links are in the description below. All right, so let's get on to this subject, because I hear this a lot from my clients who are dealing with aging parents, who are dealing with cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, all of these different issues that change the way that they act. And they already have narcissism that they're dealing with. And what happens so often when I'm working with my clients is they didn't even see or really quite understand that their parent was narcissistic until they developed dementia and until they started to watch the decline and watch the behaviors escalate and get worse and worse. And so a lot of people don't wake up to their parents being narcissistic until they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, when they're dealing with a parent who is no longer thinking rationally. Not that narcissism ever got them in that category to begin with. One of the things that happens with narcissistic parents in dementia is that you see things more clearly that you weren't able to see before. You maybe thought, well, your parent was authoritarian, or they were difficult, or they were challenging in many different ways, but you may not have noticed their lack of empathy, because now it gets magnified when they have dementia. Now you'll see more clearly that they're not able to feel with you. They're not able to think things through. They don't care anyway. They don't really care like what their impact is on the people around them. So they don't care if they're doing dangerous things that might actually hurt somebody else. It doesn't occur to them. They are instead really focusing on you being the problem and you being the one who's keeping them from doing the thing that they want to be doing. And that gets magnified, that gets larger, because as they go through cognitive decline, they become more and more dangerous in many ways. They become more dangerous behind the wheel of a car. They become more dangerous out in public spaces, where they might even be worse than usual in terms of the way that they speak to the wait staff, or they may become more and more belligerent and more difficult to deal with. And they typically do when they're dealing with dementia and cognitive decline. They can't think straight to begin with. They're often ruled by rage and shame and guilt. And now they're really even more quick to the rage, more quick to the shame, and more quick to the guilt than they were before. And they can't hide it the way that they used to, because that's a big part of narcissism, is the calculated ways that they go about using manipulation tactics to really hurt people. And so narcissistic parents, as they develop dementia and they get worse and worse, they have a very difficult time keeping track of their stories. They have a difficult time keeping track of what they told to whom. It starts to become even more obvious. Their narcissism becomes more obvious, as does their dementia, because these two things are coming together. So they have this very difficult personality style on top of having this issue of not being able to really think clearly, and mixing up their stories, mixing up the events that happened in the past, recreating even more new stories. And the way that they continue scapegoating people in the family system can get even more pronounced than it did before, where you're feeling more vulnerable as they become more vulnerable, and it's even less predictable as to what they're going to do next and how they're going to do it. So these dangerous things that they might be doing, and even the ways that they're treating your other parent, can be really dangerous. They can be putting them in all kinds of dangerous situations because they're not able to make decisions on their behalf in a way that's sound. And that starts to become more and more obvious. And this is one of the reasons why they don't see it until they're dealing with their cognition really failing. And one of the things that dementia does is it loops the person who has dementia into a repeating pattern. It's almost like they get trapped in parts of their personality. So they keep going around in this loop of these behavior patterns that used to surface when they got stressed. But now it's like they don't have a filter, and they seem to be unable to stop themselves from going into these loops. So they don't filter things like they used to. And so this becomes even worse for you because it becomes more pronounced, and they become more difficult and more belligerent as they age and as dementia continues to increase. Because what we tend to watch in dementia, and I'm not a medical doctor, but I have witnessed it before, is that they go through these periods where they sort of plateau, then they go way down and then plateau again into the cognitive decline. And there's just different stages of dementia that they go through. So it makes their narcissism much, much more difficult to hide and to manipulate other people with the manipulation tactics that they were so skilled at using when they were younger. They just don't think as clearly as they used to. So some of the things that they might cycle in is they may blow up more often than they used to. They may blow up at things that they were already volatile anyway, but they may blow up at things that make absolutely no sense, even though that was already happening. The increase of these massive blowups, which are they're like toddler fits. When you tell a toddler no, you're going to feel that way about your narcissistic parent, but that's going to be even more pronounced if they have dementia, because you're going to tell them no, they can't do something, and then they're going to throw their huge fit. I mean, that's the way to tell if there's a narcissist as a narcissist to begin with, is you tell them no and see what they do with your no. A flexible person is going to say, oh, okay, well, we'll just reschedule some other time, but that's not what happens with the narcissistic people. They get upset when you bust up the script, the idea they have in their head about how they want things to go. They want you to comply with the things that they want you to do. And so those things that they ask you to do in dementia may even become more of a challenge for you as the adult child of this narcissistic parent, because they're asking you for even more than they used to. They're asking you to fulfill their every single little need, go to the store and get me this and get me that, and take me here and take me there and take me to my appointments, and all of these things, these hoops. I talk about these hoops that they make us jump through from the time we're little kids. There are more and more and more of them, and they're on fire and jumping through those hoops of fire when they get to this stage. And part of it is because they've forgotten what they asked you to do. And so when they forget what they asked you to do, they keep asking you and re-asking you to do the same things over and over and over again for them. And so their demands on your time become larger and larger and larger. And a lot of it's coming from the dementia because they forgot that they had asked you to do something, but you're afraid to say anything to them because you don't want them to blow up at you again. And you'll see this too with the nurses and the doctors. They're going to blow up at them more and more than they used to when they were not going through cognitive decline, because what it does to the mind and the personality is pretty intense, and it's really hard to watch, and it's really hard to be a part of and to know what to do next. So, abusive behaviors and manipulation tactics can become more pronounced also during dementia if you have a narcissistic parent. And those behaviors start to become more undeniable. They may actually love bomb you more than they used to. And, or like suddenly you were scapegoated and now you're being love bombed. And so they're cycling through their manipulation tactics even more quickly than they used to do before. And then it's even more confusing for you because if you've ever been scapegoated by a narcissistic parent and then they suddenly are nice to you, a lot of us will get this really sick feeling like, what have you done with my parent, who I'm so used to being just mean. Um, and it's a weird feeling. And anybody who's been through this can really relate to what I'm trying to say here. It's a very strange feeling when they're suddenly nice to you and they were always just cruel. And so it's really one of the most confusing things that you can go through as an adult child of a narcissist is having a narcissistic parent who has dementia, because it gets even more confusing for you as the adult child who's going through this. Another thing that's going on with your narcissistic parent when they have dementia is they are feeling more vulnerable as they start to kind of understand the ways that they're forgetting things. It makes them feel weaker, which makes them feel vulnerable. And vulnerability is not something a narcissistic person ever wants to feel because they associate vulnerability with weakness. Now, somebody with high empathy actually sees vulnerability as a strength and something that's really empowering and amazing for a person to be able to have, to be able to say, hey, I need help. But a narcissistic person isn't in that place. So they feel worse and they will get more combative because they're feeling worse about themselves. And of course, as you know, if you have a narcissistic parent, it's all about them. Everything revolves around them. And what you think, feel, and believe doesn't matter. Your fight to try to help protect them doesn't matter because they don't see that as you're trying to protect them. They see that as you're trying to attack them. And so that's part of why they jump out more and more and yell more and more and scream more and more and act more and more belligerent is because they think that you're attacking them and you're calling them weak when they're really projecting their own insecurities and weakness on you, like they always did and like they always will. But now it's even more intense and more increased. And so that puts a tremendous amount of stress on you if you're the person who's trying to take care of your narcissistic parent who also has dementia. Another thing that I see with narcissistic parents who have dementia is that they will use the will. As they're getting closer to the end of their lives, they will use their will to control their kids. And I've seen from my clients over the years, I have seen them do horrible things with promising one kid the will and then promising the other kid, the estate and promising them they're going to have this and they're going to have that, threatening to take it all away and give it all to charity, which is actually something that they don't typically do, but to give it to someone that is not the kids, then giving away big items from the home to other people to impress them, to make them look like, they're altruistic, because they'll continue doing those performative things where they want people to think that they're really good people, people on the outside, but people on the inside, namely the kids. And if there is another parent that's still living, all of those behaviors escalate and things get worse. And the promises around the will from one day to the next, you just don't know what's going to happen. But of course, if you do something that upsets them, suddenly they'll be like, oh, you're out, And so those behaviors get more and more pronounced and you become more and more confused about what is going on, what's going to happen, and what's going to happen after the fact. And I would say just take yourself out of the will in your own mind. It's going to be one of the things that's going to give you a lot of solace. Just think of it as if you get it, great. If you don't, whatever. And I know this is hard for some people, but this is really important. That focusing on you, taking care of you is going to be a very, very important part of the process of healing from this kind of abuse. So just take yourself out of it in your own mind, just work your way through that, and then come up with your own plan to care for yourself, which I know sounds like it should be a basic thing for people to think about. But when you grew up with a narcissistic parent who used money as a way to control you, which they routinely do, whether it be they're using your money to they're siphoning your money from you, which is something that a lot of parents do. And then others who may be making a lot of money who will use that money to control you. So there's just different ways that they go about using money, whether they're pulling it from you, pulling your resources, or they're trying to pull the resources that they have away from you because they don't want you to have them. And so they keep you in this constant state of, I don't know what's going to happen next. And they do it in every single level of life. And so the will is one of the arenas where they really do make things very difficult for the heirs who are dealing with a narcissistic parent who has dementia. Another thing that happens when you have a narcissistic parent who has dementia is that their stories start to get really convoluted and they start to make even less sense than they used to. Word salad is something that's pretty common for narcissistic people to begin with. And word salad is basically where they'll talk in circles. It makes no sense. The words that they're putting together don't even make sense. And they've always used that as a tactic to deflect away from the thing that you're trying to focus on that they don't want you to look at. And so, and of course, deflect from them taking any kind of accountability for anything that they did. And so the word salad increases, it gets worse and worse. They have a harder time pronouncing things, and they have a harder time keeping track of the stories that they told. Like, what did they tell to you? What did they tell to your other sibling? And so they have a harder time rehearsing those stories because very often the story is a flat out lie. So it's sort of like they're trying to figure out, like, wait, which lie did I tell to whom? And they were better at tracking that earlier in their lives. And now they lose track of the stories. And so they're having a really hard time with keeping everything straight in their own minds because their cognition has declined so much that they're not able to keep track of their stories. And another part of the story thing is that narcissists are delusional to begin with. So they created a fantasy life that they want other people to think is their life, that they want to project out to other people and make them think they're this good person and they're great and they have a happy family and everything's wonderful and all of that. And so that's the delusion that they're trying to project to the world. But it's a delusion, and their delusions get even more pronounced and more difficult for them to track. And so they have a hard time figuring out what the thing was that they were projecting in the first place. And so things start to get twisted and convoluted, and the gaslighting gets worse. So you don't quite know which end is up, like what's reality and what isn't. And that was a hard thing to begin with because you already didn't know what the reality was. And what happens a lot is in the siblings in these narcissistic families is that they do start to compare notes and they start to compare stories, which is something you weren't supposed to do. It's breaking out of that silence. And sometimes they will start to compare stories and realize, like, oh, wow, you were told something completely different. And this happens a lot after the narcissistic parent passes away, where they start to put the stories together and put the puzzle pieces of the intricate puzzle of just lies that were weaved all around them. And then you start to get to see, like, oh, that's what happened when we were 15, or that's what happened when we were 10. And the whole thing went down. And so not everybody gets this in every narcissistic family system, but sometimes you do get to talk about, what you were told and what they were told. And then you start to do some healing around that. Hopefully, if your sibling or other family member is open to the healing process. Another thing that becomes really very pronounced when a narcissistic parent has dementia is their lack of empathy becomes even more clear for you to see. And this is really hard because what you start to understand is they didn't really care about you. They don't really care about much of anything. They're always interested in self-preservation. That's their number one thing. It's all about them and all about themselves. And empathy is this ability to be able to feel with another person. It's not sympathy is feeling sorry for someone else, but empathy is feeling with them, gauging, well, if I do this thing to them, they're going to be impacted by this thing that I'm doing. Someone could get hurt if I do this thing. They don't think like that at all. It doesn't occur to them that someone else could get hurt. They don't care. Even if you point it out to them, like, hey, you doing this thing is actually pretty dangerous at this point. The doctor says you shouldn't be doing this thing, but they still will do the thing anyway because they literally don't care. So they become harder and harder to deal with, more and more combative, more and more difficult to deal with. And it makes it hard for you to care for them as they're going through this aging process. And so one of the things that comes up for you is a tremendous amount of anger, a tremendous amount of rage, this recognition that, oh my gosh, I've been dealing with this for my whole life and I didn't realize how bad it was, but now it's blaring in my face because my parent has narcissism and dementia or high narcissistic traits is what they're dealing with. And so that means that you have to deal with it if you're up close and you're the person who's having to work with them and help them. Many people at this stage do decide to go no contact. And this actually can be a big source of judgment from other people and extended family members or friends or other people in the outer circles will be just like, oh my gosh, you're so cold. But it's the other way around. That narcissistic parent was so cold and so cruel and unkind that your heart, your mind, your body could no longer take it. So some people do actually go no contact at this stage. There's, it's up, whatever you have to decide, it's up to you. I know a lot of clients of mine who have had to stay in the house. They gave everything up in their life to take care of that narcissistic parent. And that included income. And so now they're fully dependent on the narcissistic parent. And this is a really hard space to be in. I would recommend that if you're seeing this coming down the pike, to say no to it before it happens, because it is not a good place. It makes it even more difficult for you to process this abuse. But it's really important that you do process the narcissistic abuse that you've been through and help yourself to heal from it, because you can get to a place where you're able to state what you need. And, here's some things that you can start doing when you're dealing with a narcissistic parent with dementia, and if it's plausible, and not every situation is it plausible, but I mean, if they start screaming at you over the phone, I'm not available for this, hang up the phone. I'm going to go now, because they're in a loop, they're in a tirade, and they're just going to keep going. And so it will make sense for you to put the phone down, to hang up. It will make sense for you sometimes just to walk out of the house, walk out of the assisted living place. Just, you don't have time. I don't have the bandwidth for this, is really what you're feeling. And just letting them know, I'm leaving now. And chances are great they're not even going to remember that you did it. Or maybe they'll make up another big story. It doesn't really matter. I think the most important thing is that you take care of yourself and that you help yourself heal. There are lots of us out there with narcissistic abuse recovery backgrounds, and who have actually been through this as well, who can help you heal from this complex issue. Having a parent who has narcissism and dementia at the same time is an incredibly huge challenge to go through. And you don't have to go it alone. You can get help. And there's lots and lots of ways to do it, like these videos here. And there's Love School Online Holistic Academy with Iconic Me group coaching program, which is also one-on-one. So I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but we're within a group, but you're going to get one-to-one coaching and it's anonymous. So you're not on camera and you get to hear each other's stories and each other's the advice going to the different people in the group. So, and it's a small group. You're really going to love it. So apply to speak to me if you are interested in working with me or learning more about the various things that I have to offer. And I hope this information has been really helpful for you. I know this is a really, really difficult thing to go through. And it's really important that you do seek some kind of help to get you through the process because it is extraordinarily difficult to be waking up to your narcissistic parent while you're also dealing with their dementia and cognitive decline. I'm Dr. Meg Haworth, and I thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has helped you get well now.